The purpose of experiments is to obtain scientific truths, yet some people treat humans as subjects for research and torture. And some of these incidents have occurred in modern civilized societies. Today, let's take stock of 9 of the most brutal scientific experiments that have actually happened in history. From the early 1940s to 1953, renowned pediatric neuropsychiatrist Lauretta Bender became interested in studying children with schizophrenia. She conducted electroshock experiments on at least 100 children, aged 3 to 12, at Bellevue Hospital in New York City. Some reports suggest over 200 children. They claimed that this electroconvulsive therapy, ECT, was used to treat over 500 children, including Bender's subjects, from 1942 to 1956 at the hospital. However, Bender's private memoranda revealed her frustration. At times, she subjected children with schizophrenia, some younger than 3 years old, to electroshock therapy twice a day for 20 consecutive days, leading some of the experimental children to become violent and exhibit suicidal tendencies. Syphilis is a dreadful disease that can lie dormant for decades and then resurface, wreaking havoc on a person's major organs. However, 60 years ago, approximately 1,500 people in Guatemala, primarily vulnerable populations, were unknowingly infected with syphilis. This was due to an experiment conducted by American scientist Dr. John Cutler to test the efficacy of penicillin in treating sexually transmitted diseases. At least one patient died during the course of the study. While the scientists had obtained authorization from authorities at the time, they did not seek consent from the individuals involved. It was only a few years ago that President Obama apologized to the people of Guatemala for this incident. Some senators referred to it as the darkest moment in American history. The doctors initially allowed prostitutes to contract gonorrhea or syphilis and then engage in sexual relations without using protection with soldiers or prisoners. However, even with such practices, they did not manage to infect many men. Subsequently, the doctors directly infected soldiers, prisoners, and mentally ill patients. Someone once asked Einstein, as the smartest person in the world, "How do you feel?" Einstein replied, "I don't know, you'll have to ask Tesla." The incredibly brilliant Tesla, in his early years of research, created numerous experimental devices to generate X-rays. One of these projects, known as the Tesla death ray, was particularly astonishing and was considered a particle beam weapon. During his lifetime, Tesla approached the U.S. War Department, the British government, and the Soviet Union, lobbying them to purchase his death ray, also referred to as the Peace Ray, research. However, he was unsuccessful, and this project was classified as the highest level of national secrecy by the U.S. War Department at the time. If successful back then, it would have undoubtedly become a cruel and deadly weapon. The infamous Unit 731 experiment, widely known among Chinese people, conducted various biological and bacteriological warfare research on Chinese subjects. These experiments included vivisection, frostbite experiments, throwing grenades at individuals in different positions, flamethrower tests, blood transfusion experiments between humans and horses, plague experiments, limb exchange experiments, and numerous other unspeakably cruel and inhumane acts. According to post-war scholars' estimates, at least 10,000 people perished in these experiments, and over 400,000 Chinese civilians died as a result of bacteriological warfare. After the defeat of Unit 731, fleas and rats that escaped caused outbreaks of the plague in several villages, including Harbin Pingfang, Hirawayuan, and many others, resulting in widespread fatalities. The orchestrator of these inhumane experiments was Lieutenant General Shiro Ishii of the Imperial Japanese Army, depicted in the image below. Project 4.1 refers to a medical research conducted by the United States on the residents of the Marshall Islands after the massive hydrogen bomb test called Castle Bravo on March 1, 1954, at Bikini Atoll, which resulted in an unexpectedly high yield. In the initial decade following the nuclear tests, the impact on the island residents was not significantly noticeable, and statistical data could not establish a direct correlation between the observed effects and radiation exposure. During the first 5 years, there was a doubling of the miscarriage and stillbirth rates among local women exposed to radiation, but these rates later returned to normal levels. Children exhibited developmental disorders and growth defects without a clear pattern. However, in the subsequent decade, the undeniable effects of radiation became evident. By 1974, children began to be diagnosed with thyroid cancer due to exposure to radiation, and nearly 1/3 of the radiation-exposed islanders developed benign tumors. The Soviet secret police's poison laboratory, also known as Laboratory 1, Laboratory 12, or the Club, was a clandestine research and development facility for lethal poisons within the Soviet intelligence agency. The Soviet Union applied deadly toxins such as mustard gas, ricin protein, and digitalis glycoside on Gulag, enemies of the people, prisoners. The purpose of the experiments was to find a tasteless, odorless chemical substance that couldn't be detected during autopsies. Candidate poisons were mixed into the victim's food as disguised medications administered to them. Eventually, a concoction called C2, which met all the desired properties, was formulated. Witnesses testified that the victims experienced physical changes, becoming shorter, rapidly weakened, silent, and calm, ultimately dying at around 15 minutes. Malinovsky brought individuals of different physiological states and ages to the laboratory to obtain a comprehensive understanding of the pharmacological characteristics of various poisons. In addition to human experiments, Malinovsky also executed prisoners with poison on the orders of General Pavel Sudoplatov. The MKUltra program, also known as MK-Ultra, was a code name for a mind control research program conducted by the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, of the United States. It was carried out by the agency's Office of Scientific Intelligence and began in the early 1950s, continuing at least until the late 1960s. There is substantial published evidence to suggest that this program covertly used various drugs and other methods to control the mental states of individuals and alter their brain functions. The experiments involved the administration of LSD, lysergic acid diethylamide, among other substances, to CIA employees, military personnel, doctors, other government agents, prostitutes, psychiatric patients, and ordinary citizens, in order to study their reactions to these substances. The subjects of these experiments were often unknowingly administered these drugs, which violated the spirit of the Nuremberg Code, to which the United States agreed after World War II. Even disregarding the fact that the victims were drugged without their knowledge, the process of recruiting subjects for these experiments was often illegal, although the use of LSD was legal in the United States until October 6, 1966. In Operation Midnight Climax, the CIA set up brothels to control certain individuals who were reluctant to discuss sensitive matters due to embarrassment. People unknowingly consumed LSD, and the brothels were equipped with one-way mirrors to record and study the effects of the drugs for future observation. In 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered the destruction of all documents related to the MKUltra program. As a result of this directive, most of the files concerning this program within the CIA were destroyed, making comprehensive research on the MKUltra program nearly impossible. Even today, many people are horrified when they see the numbers 731. Unit 731, also known as the Devil's Unit, was a secret military medical unit of the Imperial Japanese Army during World War II. It was based in Harbin, China, and was involved in research on biological warfare, bacteriological warfare, and human experimentation. The unit operated under the code name of a pharmaceutical factory. They conducted horrifying experiments on living human beings to study the effects of biological weapons. These experiments included vivisection, live dissection, throwing grenades at individuals from different distances, frostbite studies, flamethrower tests, plague experiments, blood transfusions between humans and animals, limb exchanges, and human-animal hybridization, among other grotesque experiments. After the war, the United States government granted immunity to the scientists responsible for these experiments and safely brought them to the United States, claiming it was in exchange for the knowledge gained from their research. Nazi human experiments were large-scale medical experiments conducted by the German Nazis during World War II, primarily within concentration camps under their control. Led by Eduard Wirtz, Auschwitz concentration camp selected prisoners as subjects for various experiments aimed at improving the performance of German soldiers on the battlefield, aiding in the recovery of wounded soldiers, and promoting the racial ideology of the Third Reich. The experiments conducted on twins in the concentration camps aimed to study the similarities and differences in genetics and eugenics among twins. They also sought to explore whether the human body could be manipulated through involuntary means. The central figure in this research was Dr. Joseph Mengele, who conducted experiments on over 1,500 pairs of twins, with only a few hundred surviving. Dr. Mengele arranged the twins by gender and age and kept them in barracks for experimentation. The experiments ranged from injecting various chemicals into the twins' eyes to study if it could change their eye color to sewing twins together. These events stand as a grave desecration of human rights, and the atrocities committed during that time are a dark chapter in history.